Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
And we're very glad you have joined us for the Three Martini Lunch today. We're brought to you by Plexiderm. Go to tryplexiderm.com and use our promo code Martini for 50% off plus an additional $10 off. Much more on that later in the podcast. And Jim, I'm sad to report that we don't have another dead ISIS leader to talk about today, but we do have all good martinis, so hopefully that's a nice consolation prize. You know, we were kind of joking around about how ISIS were making political analogies and even some sports analogies. You mentioned the Jets' offensive line yesterday. ISIS holding a press conference today, and a lot of people think it's to announce the new leader. So once again, we're setting the trend here, and ISIS acting Adam
Gase. Pick Adam Gase.
I know you want to punish Adam Gase, but I'm not sure you're that mad at him. But then again, maybe you are. I don't know.
It's just how the effect he would have on ISIS. You know, week after week, he'd come out and say, well, we just didn't get it done again. We had a really good week of practices. We really thought our attacks were going to work. And, we just need to get back to the basics, back to the drawing board. All those kind of excuses that I'm getting tired of hearing in the football realm, I really wouldn't mind hearing in the terrorism realm.
Yes, constant failure in the terrorism realm is a good thing, and so is killing them a lot. So we'll see what happens with that story later in the week and beyond. Jim, it's odd that Barack Obama is one of our good martinis today. In fact, it's almost appropriate, though, because I'm pretty sure the last time he was our good martini was when bin Laden got killed. So it's been about 8.5 years. He's obviously not president anymore. He was at an event for the Obama Foundation, which I didn't even know existed. And I'm not exactly sure what the question was, but he started talking about woke culture and how trying to out-woke everyone is not good for anybody.
But I do get a sense sometimes now among certain young people, and this is accelerated by social media, there is this sense sometimes of the way of me making change is to be as judgmental as possible about other people. And that's enough. Like if I tweet or hashtag about how you didn't do something right or used the wrong verb, or then I can sit back and feel pretty good about myself. Because, man, you see how woke I was? I called you out. That's not activism. That's not bringing about change.
So, Jim, I'm sure there's a lot of conservative listeners today who are like, well, he didn't really act like that when he was president. This is the guy who said that the Cambridge police acted stupidly, that people who didn't support the Iran deal were making common cause with the Ayatollahs. He was the king of the straw man, so he was the only one with a reasonable position, and if anybody disagreed with him, they were the radicals. So a lot of that's true, of course, but what he said here is true, and hopefully a lot of people listen to it.
You know, Greg, Obama has made comments along these lines a couple times since he left the presidency. I think this is the most explicit he's ever gotten. I think the first time he's ever referred to woke culture. And I think probably the first time I've heard him kind of like really mock these people for being ineffective and in a little bit, both intellectually lazy. He's talking about the importance of engaging with people who disagree with you, how you can't wall yourself off in the past. Greg, I want to go to a time machine. I want to go back to, say, 2009, 2010. And I want to say that 4 of the figures who are most adamant in their opposition to PC culture, politically correct culture, speech restrictions, etc., and who are most adamant that they will not be silenced by this would be Barack Obama, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, and Kanye West. And, it's interesting because these were, circa, in our younger years, these, coolness defined was, not just these comedians and performers, but also President Obama. And you could argue, I don't know how whether you would characterize it as just they got old, or whether the next generation coming up behind them got even more woke or even more closed-minded or even more addicted to social media outrage. But it's kind of fascinating to see the Democrats and even people who I think you characterize as progressives from our younger years, looking at what they're seeing from these social justice warriors and saying, okay, look, not only is this not what we were fighting for, and this is not who we want to pass the torch to, you guys aren't even appreciating what we were trying to build, what our goals were So look, it's not often we applaud President Obama, but hey, look, it's good to hear this. If anybody on that side has the stature to get people to possibly rethink things, he might be it. Oh, by the way, I can't help but get the feeling that this is an undercurrent here that comes with this Democratic presidential primary going on, and the not so subtle criticism of Obama era policies, and the numerous criticisms that Biden ultimately the Obama administration was a disappointment to many progressives. I think Obama takes a little bit of offense at that, and it's not going to come out directly. He said he doesn't want to take sides in this primary, but maybe it's me. I see that as a subtext in these comments here.
Could be. That's an interesting take. I was actually thinking that it was kind of like the Rahm Emanuel situation from earlier in the week, where he thinks people being overly woke and trying to out-left each other is going to make Democrats in general look ridiculous and extreme, and that's going to hurt them at the ballot box. But defending his own legacy sounds more in character for Barack Obama, so there might be a little bit of both, but I definitely see where you're coming from there. All right, let's talk about Plexiderm. Obama looks pretty relaxed, looks pretty happy in his retirement years. It seems like he's enjoying it, but even he is not immune from aging, and neither are the rest of us. And so that means wrinkles, crow's feet, those large under-eye bags. So just take a quick look in the mirror and see where you are in that situation. Now imagine if you have any of those things that they're gone. And we're not talking about risky, expensive surgery here. We're talking about these wrinkles, crow's feet, bags gone in minutes. How? Plexiderm, a clinically studied serum that visibly eliminates your wrinkles, crow's feet, and the bags under the eyes in minutes. It's the edge you've been looking for.
Are you skeptical? Do you not believe it? Just wait until you see the results. If you want to look 10 years younger, Plexiderm can make you look rejuvenated, and simply put, you will be blown away by the results. Plexiderm can give you the confidence you need to be yourself, whether it's at work or out with friends. And the best part is Plexiderm goes on clear, so no one will know that you're using it.
All you have to do is go to tryplexiderm.com, and when you use the promo code Martini, you get 50% off plus an additional $10 off. That's right, 50% off plus an extra $10 off. This offer is also available by calling 1-800-685-1292 and mentioning, again, the promo code Martini. Plexiderm is backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Visit tryplexiderm.com today and use the code Martini at checkout. Again, that's tryplexiderm.com. All right, Jim, let's move on to Good Martini number 2. And as you point out in the Morning Jolt today, Kim Kardashian deserves some credit for this because she has been pushing for a congressional resolution blaming Turkey for the Armenian genocide. And this obviously goes back now over 100 years. The vote was lopsided, 405-11. This is something that the U.S. government had held off doing for decades and decades because they didn't want to damage relations with Turkey, and they figured dredging up largely symbolic but still important resolution at a time when there are major geopolitical things to collaborate on wasn't a very good idea. But now that things are clearly souring with Turkey, it's come back forward again. And once again, the vote 405-11. Interestingly, Ilhan Omar did not vote for this. I believe she voted present because she said it didn't also address the African slave trade to North America or the persecution of Native Americans. And she claims that those two groups were killed to the tune of hundreds of millions over the years. I'm not sure where she's getting that number from. But, Jim, this genocide is clearly a part of history as much as Turkey tries to deny it. And calling them on the carpet is probably long overdue here.
Yeah, after that Omar statement, Greg, I never want to hear about whataboutism from anybody ever again.
Right.
So the first thing is that if you're wondering, hey, was there an Armenian genocide? Yes, there was. I can say this on the 3 Martini Lunch podcast because we're taped here in the good old United States of America. Listeners may know I lived for Turkey for 2 years, a little more than that, 2005, 2007. There was never any risk that they were going to come after me for what I wrote, but in every bit of the English language Turkish press that I could encounter, it was always referred to as the so-called Armenian genocide. Because if you talked about or wrote about the Armenian genocide in Turkish media, you could be charged with a crime. That is how seriously the Turks take it. So if you look back to my writing back at that time period, this is back when the Iraq War is going on. We are still very much in the fight against al-Qaeda. And there was a sense that this was not the right time to bring up this issue. By the way, for anyone wondering, was there an Armenian genocide? Yes. The Turkish argument has always been like, well, it was just a big, messy ethnic war that ended up being one-sided. No, that's genocide. But the question was this, we would not feel particularly pleased if the Turkish parliament passed a resolution denouncing the treatment of Native Americans. So did we want to stick them in the eye, so to speak, with something like this at a time when we still needed Incirlik Air Base for operations in Iraq? They were not allowing us to use as a military for military attacks, but they're still allowing it for use of resupply missions and things like that. We needed Turkish intelligence cooperation in, like I said, the fight against Al-Qaeda and other Islamist groups. At that point, with Erdogan, he was not the guy the U.S. government ever would have chosen, but the sense was, well, this is a guy we can still do business with. That started to change year by year. The U.S.-Turkish relationship changed as Erdogan became more explicitly Islamist and they became less cooperative. And I went back and I checked, and thankfully around 2010, I was like, you know what, this is, at some point it starts becoming okay to pass this resolution, because if Turkey's free to make their own decisions, but part of their own decisions will be, we will be less cooperative on things that are priority to them. And it was a priority to them to not pass this resolution. It's very much wrapped up in national pride and all that stuff. Armenian Americans, for obvious reasons, wanted this very badly. Nancy Pelosi was a big supporter of this. Adam Schiff was a big supporter of this. And for a long time, there were enough Republicans who said, look, we're not disputing the historical facts. This just isn't the right fight to pick. That times change. Things change. One big change is the Turks have started bombing the bejesus out of our former allies in the fight against ISIS and the Kurds over in northern Syria. And the other big change is Kim Kardashian. And people think I'm saying this joking or no, she's very adamant about this. Her father was an Armenian American, and she's tweeted about this, pushed for this, reached out to Jared Kushner about this. People may recall she had a big hand in the criminal justice reform. Look, when you're a celebrity, you can command a lot of eyeballs. You can push a lot of people to get active in social media about this. And we're at a point where the calculus changed. It makes sense to say to Turkey, look, if you're not cooperating for us on anything, and you've decided to start attacking our allies, and force us to get our guys out before your guys start storming across the border, fine, we're going to pass this. Like we chose not to pass this all these years as a favor to you guys to stay on good terms. You guys don't play nice with us, we're not going to play nice with you. And also we kneel before the awesome power of Kim Kardashian.
Jim, looking at the CNN version of this story, they point out that by the best estimates, it's about 1.5, 1.6 million Armenians killed in the genocide back around 100 years ago, a little more than that now. Turkey, it says, and you alluded to this, but just the verbiage of this just makes your skin crawl. Turkey maintains to this day that the killings did not constitute genocide and disputes the death toll, putting the figure closer to 300,000. So, Jim, just 300,000
Only
people.
300,000. A mere 300,000.
All right, let's talk about our third good martini now. And if you've been following some of the media reports about the overall outlook for the Senate in 2020, there's a little bit of hand-wringing going on with the Republicans hoping to hang on to their majority. We've talked about Cory Gardner's tough re-election fight. Joni Ernst has probably got a pretty tough one in Iowa. There's also Susan Collins in Maine, mostly because of her support for Brett Kavanaugh. But Maine overall is still a left-leaning state, even though one of its congressional districts went for President Trump in 2016. So she's considered to be endangered. But now the likely opponent of Senator Collins is facing some issues as well. Free Beacon talking about how the Maine House Speaker, her name is Sarah Gideon, used a corporate-funded PAC to reimburse herself for political donations. And so while the Ethics Committee up there is deliberating, Republican campaign officials are touring Maine with a mobile billboard highlighting the allegations against Gideon. Good luck defending your scheme to launder your PAC's corporate money into federal elections, the billboard says. And Republicans in the legislature have filed an ethics report against Gideon over this. So, Jim, I'm not sure good luck defending your scheme to launder your PAC's corporate money into federal elections is the greatest bumper sticker ever created. But, hey, Susan Collins looks like she needs a little bit of help, and this might be a little bit of help.
It's a little wordy. Yeah, she's a crook might be a little bit quicker or easier there. Yeah, I mean, look, first of all, you mentioned the hand-wringing. Look, this is not a great political environment for Republicans. This is, it could change between now and November, but I think it's safe to say that Donald Trump is he's going to bring you some votes in those blue collar, rural and exurban communities, but he's also going to hurt you in those suburban communities. And that's traditionally been where, senators like Susan Collins and before her Olympia Snowe, they could win a lot of folks who didn't usually vote for Republicans because they were different from it. In an era of kind of heightened polarization and partisanship, it's going to be tougher to win over those folks. Now, that having been said, Susan Collins' political obituary has been written a lot of times. And I went back, I think one of the things that struck me the most was 2008. She's running for re-election. Obama's on top of the ticket. He won Maine by some ungodly margin. And Collins still won re-election comfortably. And that kind of indicates, okay, there are circumstances where even a big presidential wave going against the Republicans in a big way is not necessarily enough to knock her off. So that's the good news. Obviously, in a situation like this, you want as flawed a Democratic nominee as possible. And now Collins has something to work with. Now the Maine Republican Party has something to work with. I strongly suspect between now and November 2020, you'll see some argument from Susan Collins, like, regardless of what you think about Kavanaugh, I've always played straight with you. I always tell you exactly what I believe and why I believe, and whether you agree with me or not, you have, I hope you respect the fact that I've always leveled with you about what I believe and why. And Bush won over a whole bunch of votes against John Kerry in 2004. This attitude of, you may not always agree with me, but you always know where I stand. And that can be an effective message. There were a bunch of people who kind of appreciated that aspect of Bush. And I think you could say about when Collins made her decision about Kavanaugh, she did not try to slip it in at the last second in the middle of the night. She went and talked on the floor of the Senate for about 45 minutes, going through all the allegations and why she didn't believe them. And it was, to me, it's what a senator is supposed to do. Hopefully the voters in Maine will concur, but even not, they'll have to recognize that the Democratic alternative is got at least one glaringly serious flaw there.
Here's a part of the story you got to love, Jim. A Gideon spokesperson acknowledged the reimbursements from the PAC to the candidate in August, but said they were the result of incorrect guidance from an advisor. So is this the Maine version of low-level employees in Cincinnati?
Yeah, that's a phrase that I always figured should catch on more, low-level employees in Cincinnati. And I just wanted that to be the universal, we're throwing some underling under the bus situation, but, as it appears we're seeing here again in Maine. But the buck never stops at the top anymore, Greg.
I guess not. And Jim, we don't talk about baseball a lot on this podcast, but as I'm sure most folks know, it's Game 7 of the World Series tonight, and the Washington Nationals forced that Game 7 with a win on Tuesday night, and so it's winner-take-all tonight between Houston and Washington. And as much as the president got booed the other night at Nationals Park, until a couple years ago, Washington had the biggest drought of the big four major sports teams, and if the Nats pull it off tonight, Trump will be president for two major championships, the Caps and the Nats, in back-to-back years, and if you count the Mystics, that's 3 because they won it also this year for the WNBA. So Washington has to be pretty happy with how the sports teams have done, except for the Redskins.
All Trump needs is for the Washington Wizards to go out and win a championship, Greg, and then all the local major sports teams will have won a championship. There's not any other one, right? No team out in Raljon, Maryland, named after, by the way, the son, because there was nothing out there, and so they named it after, was it Ralph and John or something? It was the two names of Jack Kent Cooke, the old owner of the Redskins, and it was Tony Kornheiser who wrote, "Thank goodness the names of his sons weren't Peter and Ennis." I'll let you do that in your head, but yes, tough luck on you, Redskins. I guess I have a nominal preference for the Nationals tonight. I think it's been a very exciting World Series. Really weird to see the road team winning every single game.
Right.
I like to be around other happy sports fans, so I'll bring for that. But, it is something of a win-win, Greg, because if the Astros win tonight, at least Kate Upton is happy.
Finally, something in her life will go right. That's right. On that note, we will reconvene tomorrow on Halloween. Jim, see you then.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thank you so much for being with us today. Don't forget to check out Plexiderm. It's tryplexiderm.com. Use the promo code Martini for 50% off, plus an additional $10. And join us again Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.